The warning signs don't arrive with sirens. They don't appear as flashing alerts on every screen. Most of the time, the first indications of a supply chain disruption are so ordinary that people dismiss them completely. A product that takes longer to arrive, a familiar item missing from a store shelf, a shipment delayed by a few days, a temporary shortage that seems like nothing more than an inconvenience. Yet history shows that major disruptions often begin exactly this way. The danger isn't the missing product itself. The danger is what it reveals about the system behind it. Modern civilization operates on an extraordinary assumption that millions of interconnected processes will continue functioning perfectly every day. Food moves from farms to processing plants. Components move from factories to assembly lines. Fuel moves through pipelines, refineries, storage facilities, and transportation networks. Water treatment plants receive chemicals from suppliers hundreds or even thousands of miles away. Hospitals depend on continuous deliveries of medications, equipment, and replacement parts. Every layer depends on another layer beneath it. The average person rarely thinks about these systems because under normal conditions, they are almost invisible. Open a faucet and clean water appears. Walk into a grocery store and thousands of products are available. Fill a vehicle with fuel and drive away. The convenience feels permanent, but convenience is not the same as resilience. The biggest misunderstanding about supply chain collapse is that people imagine it as a sudden event. They picture empty shelves appearing overnight and society immediately descending into chaos. Reality is usually much slower and much more dangerous. Systems rarely fail all at once. They weaken gradually. Buffers disappear. Delays increase. Inventories shrink. Redundancies vanish. What appears stable on the surface may already be under significant strain. This is why the most important survival resource is not food, water, fuel, or equipment. It is time. Time determines everything. Once a disruption becomes obvious to everyone, the opportunity to prepare is often gone. When millions of people suddenly attempt to acquire the same resources at the same moment, shortages develop rapidly. Shelves empty. Delivery schedules become overwhelmed. Prices increase. Availability decreases. What could have been obtained calmly and affordably becomes difficult or impossible to find. Emergency managers understand a principle that many households overlook. The best time to prepare is before preparation feels urgent. Consider food security. Most people assume grocery stores contain massive reserves of inventory. In reality, many stores rely on continuous replenishment. Products arrive constantly because transportation networks remain active. The food visible on shelves often represents only a small fraction of the overall system. Remove transportation from the equation and the appearance of abundance can change surprisingly quickly. Yet food itself is not the hidden survival secret. The hidden secret is reducing dependencies. Dependency is the factor that determines how vulnerable a household becomes during disruption. Every essential need depends on a chain of supporting systems. Food depends on transportation. Transportation depends on fuel. Fuel depends on refining. Refining depends on electricity, maintenance, and specialized equipment. The deeper you examine the chain, the more interconnected everything becomes. Preparedness is not simply about storing resources. Preparedness is about reducing critical dependencies. A household that can purify water has greater resilience than a household that only stores water. A household that can cook without grid electricity has greater resilience than one that relies entirely on electric appliances. A household with multiple methods of communication has greater resilience than one dependent on a single device or network. This principle appears repeatedly throughout engineering, emergency management, and disaster response. Redundancy creates resilience. Single points of failure create vulnerability. Think about aviation. Commercial aircraft contain backup systems for critical functions because engineers understand that failures are inevitable. Hospitals use backup generators because power outages occur. Data centers use redundant infrastructure because uninterrupted operation matters. Yet many households operate with dozens of single points of failure. One grocery store, One payment method, one fuel source, one communication system, one transportation option. Everything works perfectly until one link breaks. Then the weakness becomes visible. Another overlooked factor is human behavior. During normal conditions, people make decisions based on convenience. During disruptions, people make decisions based on fear. The shift can happen remarkably fast. When uncertainty increases, demand increases. When demand increases, availability decreases. When availability decreases, anxiety grows. The cycle feeds itself. This is why shortages often become worse than the original disruption would suggest. The system is not only responding to logistical challenges, it is responding to millions of human decisions occurring simultaneously. The most resilient individuals avoid this trap because they prepare before emotional pressure appears. They don't wait for confirmation. They don't wait for headlines. They don't wait for empty shelves. They understand that preparedness is fundamentally about buying time. Time to think. Time to adapt. Time to make rational decisions. Time to avoid competing with everyone else. Perhaps the most important lesson comes from examining how complex systems actually fail. Failures rarely remain isolated. A transportation problem can affect food distribution. Food distribution problems can affect public behavior. Public behavior can affect demand patterns. Demand patterns can affect inventory systems. One disruption creates another. Engineers refer to this as a cascading failure. The public often sees only the final outcome. Experts focus on the chain reaction. This distinction matters because survival depends on understanding second-order effects. The first problem is rarely the only problem. The first problem often creates the conditions for additional problems. A fuel shortage affects transportation. Transportation affects deliveries. Deliveries affect inventories. Inventories affect consumer behavior. Consumer behavior affects system stability. The cascade expands. This is why preparedness should never focus on a single scenario. The goal is flexibility. The goal is adaptability. The goal is maintaining capability when conditions change. Because conditions always change. The reality is that no one can predict the exact disruption that may occur next. It could be severe weather. It could be infrastructure failure. It could be transportation disruption. It could be a manufacturing bottleneck. It could be a cyber incident. It could be a combination of multiple events occurring simultaneously. The specific trigger matters less than most people think. What matters is vulnerability. If a household depends entirely on fragile systems, almost any disruption can create significant hardship. If a household possesses redundancy, adaptability, and reserves, the same disruption becomes far more manageable. That is the survival secret hidden behind every discussion of supply chain collapse. Don't focus exclusively on stockpiling. Focus on dependency reduction. Don't ask how much food you have. Ask how many ways you can obtain food. Don't ask how much water you store. Ask how many ways you can secure safe drinking water. Don't ask whether the system will fail tomorrow. Ask whether your household could function if part of the system failed for a month. Because resilience is not built during a crisis. Resilience is built before the crisis becomes visible. And by the time everyone else realizes there is a problem, the most valuable resource, the resource that determines every other outcome, will already be gone.